colleagues, cohorts, and friends to the Bosch Communications Summer Showcase. My name is Angelo Piga, Product Marketing Manager for RTS Intercoms. Today we have an exciting tech update for our ever-popular ODIN matrix. Our Atom and Atom M matrices, as well as our V-Link virtual matrix, have been able to be customized to add the level of redundancy that you need, and now we are adding more redundancy features to our ODIN matrix to make it an even more powerful solution for you. We will have time after the discussion on ODIN redundancy today for questions and answers, so please put your questions into the chat. Joining me today to discuss ODIN redundancy is a very familiar face of RTS, Mr. Sean Anderson, Senior Applications Design Manager for Critical Communications. Welcome,
Hello,
Sean.
Hi,
Let's
everybody.
take it from here.
Yes, hello, everybody. As Angelo said, yeah, we are happy to announce the new feature coming out next month for ODIN redundancy. I will walk you through several slides here to cover the different ways that you can apply this and the different topologies of how to implement this in your systems. So we'll go ahead and get started with a short PowerPoint, and as Angelo mentioned, we'll transition then into a Q&A session for anybody who has any questions. So. Okay. Whoops. Much better. Okay. So as Angela mentioned, myself and Angela will be covering this presentation. The topic today, ODIN redundancy. This has been long awaited for the last year to 2 years, and we are proud to announce again, yep, next month this will be shipping. So the way that the ODIN redundancy will work is we have a couple different modes of operation. We have what is referred to as a core frame and a redundant frame. And this particular slide here is showing one-to-one redundancy, similar to what most people know as peer-to-peer. So every single ODIN has a redundant backup unit. You simply connect these together with the fiber interconnect known as the IFL, which is the inner frame link. And each one of these ODINs on the right-hand side will act as a complete backup for the units on the left-hand side. They maintain things like the IP addresses, the domain names of the different devices or device names, also the settings for all of the devices, whether they be key panels, audio interfaces, telephone interfaces, etc. Each one of these is a real-time backup of all the different parameters within the ODIN. The only exception to that being the analog connectors, because those are physical audio input outputs. Those physically would need to be moved between one unit and another, but all the IP connections are fully backed up and redundant. This includes the omni connections, Arvon connections, Dante connections, etc. So again, you've got an A unit and a B unit. So the next topology that we are offering customers, we had a lot of requests for this, is what is known as one-to-many or intelligent redundancy. So in this use case here, internally we refer to this as N+M, but it's intelligent redundancy. So I'm showing a stack of 6 units of ODIN on the left-hand side, but only 2 backups in this case. The first ODIN unit as a backup is backing up frames 1 through 3. The second unit is backing up 4 through 6. And this actually keeps a snapshot of, in the case of the 1 through 3 frame, this actually keeps a snapshot of all 3 of the first frames in that 6 ODIN stack on the left. Keeps up to date in real time and can take over for any one of those units depending on how it's been configured in the setup software. So you can reduce the number of units that are required for backups. You can have it do 1, 2, 3. You could have a single unit be a backup for all 6. It just depends on what comfort level you are good with as far as the level of redundancy and what are your core frames that are most important in your system. But again, you can also do a total one-to-one backup, depending again on your risk management and what you're comfortable with. So the difference being here is the one-to-one redundancy is straightforward. You map the core unit A to redundant unit A. Redundancy sometimes will refer to in the software as a guard unit, basically guarding or backing up the primary core unit. Now with the redundant one versus many, or the intelligent redundancy, this is a feature that we do charge for. It is a bit more complex, a bit more intricate, requires a license, whereas the one-to-one we offer as a standard feature. So just different types of topology. Now, on top of that, there's also user control as far as if you want the switch over for the redundancy to be automated, or if you prefer, you can also do manual redundancy if you want a larger level of control on your system. So we'll dig a little deeper into this. And again, with the one-to-one redundancy, the systems will be able to manage each of the frames with a primary and a backup unit. As I mentioned, the 3 frames in the first slide have full redundant backup for each one of those. In intelligent redundancy, again, fully scalable from 1 unit to 8 units, depending on how comfortable you are with your level of risk. Switch over automatic or manual, as I've mentioned. Now, the Odin hardware redundancy, as I mentioned, with one-to-one, that is free of charge. We do not charge for that. You just simply point the units at each other. We also have what is called a frame replacement option. This is a third way of being able to manage your system. This is for, say, if you have a on-the-shelf spare and you have let's just use a 3-frame Odin, for instance, as an example. What this allows you to do with this backup or this frame replacement option, we refer to it as backup and restore. I can take a snapshot of all 3 of those Odins in my 3-frame system, and each is saved as an individual file. Now, if I want an on-the-shelf spare, I can simply grab that. I can load any of those 3 files into this Odin, and it now has all of the information it needs to be able to be put into the fiber loop and take over for that failed frame. So if you don't want an active backup, more of an on-the-shelf spare, where this will come in handy is, say, if you have multiple studios running independent Odins, you don't have to have a backup Odin for every studio. You can have a simple one on the shelf, load its backup image or its restore image, put it into the fiber loop, and it will take over, is already all its programming, its IP information, has all of the user and key settings from your ZEdit file, and is able to quickly come up and restore your system to operation. So again, it's called backup and restore. And again, it's based on snapshots of your system. One thing to note is if you are going to use this method, you might want to periodically do snapshots of your active frames, because if your snapshot or your restore file is an older one, when you bring that on-the-shelf unit back online, it might have older data. So to manage this more efficiently, you may want to just get into the routine of doing periodic backups of your active system. So. Okay, so again, the offering here, one-to-one backup, just simple peer-to-peer. Unit 1 is backed up by Odin backup 1, 2 to 3, and so on. And then the one-to-many or intelligent redundancy. As I had stated, they can be back up 1 or more units for each of the backup units. You can select them from 1 all the way up to 8, depending on what you're comfortable with. Now, within the ZEdit software, there are a few new boxes here. On the left-hand side, these are your active frames. On the right-hand side, these are the redundant frames. As I've made mention before, we refer to the redundant frames as guard frames. In this far left column here, you'll see that the guard frame A is set up to back up frame number 2. Guard frame B is set for 3, and guard frame C is actually set up to back up 1 through 3. So it allows you to pick one or more units to back up depending on what you're comfortable with. And there are a lot of different features within here where you can set what it swaps for. You can put priorities to these. If you have it set to back up more than one frame, it will default to the lowest. If in the case of, say, you had 2 frames go down, pretty unlikely scenario, it will default to the lowest number frame first, and then the next highest, and so on and so on. Now, some of the unique features, if you're running the redundant systems, is the fiber interconnect link, the IFL, does not need to actually be in a certain topology. I can have it wired in several different fashions. It's plug and play. So I could have the 1 through 8 core frames all linked in sequence to one another, and then guard frame A as the 9th frame, closing the loop. Or I can go core to backup, core to backup. It does not rely on a set of fiber interconnects. It's a plug and play ring. You just need to make sure that all of the units are part of that ring, and it will resolve the connections themselves. ZEdit also has the ability, as I was stating, to save as part of that intercom setup file. You can see here things like the configuration, the intercom names, port allocations, and you can customize each of these depending on what you want to restore. And again, that's based on the file that you saved, but you can deselect things if you do not want to restore these. But gives you full capability of pretty much everything from trunk master connections. If you're using our VLink SIP server products, SNMP configurations, and so on, you can either select or deselect those to be restored from those backup files. Now, with that said, we'll go into the Q&A section here. It's pretty straightforward, but yes, if you have questions, please feel free to bring those up in the chat, and we'll cover those here now.
So the first question that we have in our chat, Sean, is, does Arvon follow failover to the redundant frame?
Correct. All IP connections, whether it's Arvon, the Omnio connections, things like to peripheral devices like our GPIO relay frames, all of those are carried over into the backup systems. And if there is a cutover from a core system to a guard system, all those connections will be automatically restored without user intervention.
Okay. And we have the same question, only referring to Dante redundancy or Omnio platform.
Oh, yes. The Dante connections are fully redundant as well. Typically, the Dante connections in our testing get restored roughly in about 30 seconds. And yeah, so all of those, it references the Dante controller, so it will automatically reestablish Dante interconnects, same as with the Omnio or key panel connections. Yes.
Next question is, how long does it take to cut over to the redundant frame?
Depending on as far as the cutover, that's based on a couple of different things. The cutover from a core frame to a guard frame can be triggered by a loss of a fiber connection or a loss of the control IP information between different ODINs. So either one of those is seen as a trigger event. Typically, once that has been detected, the cutover on that is roughly somewhere in the neighborhood of about 15 to 30 seconds, depending on how fast your network is set up to operate and do restores and things, but typically in the 15 to 30-second range.
Okay. Next is the analog connections you said needed to be moved. Can those be split or put through a distribution amp?
Yes, actually, that is one of the easier ways to do that is put that through a DA. It's a lot of wires. Unfortunately, yes, but yeah, if you were to put it through DA and summing amps, yeah, then you can just split your 4-wire connections to both units, correct?
Okay. And how can you talk a little bit more about how the frames are wired via the IFL?
Yes, like I said, they're connected through the IFL. The IFL on the back of the Odin unit has two connections. There's an upstream and a downstream. So the downstream of each Odin unit connects to the upstream of the next unit in the chain, and so on. So if I'm creating, let's go worst case scenario, if I have an 8-frame Odin and I want to hook that up with 8 backups, I'm just doing downstream from 1 to 2 and so on till I get to number 8. Then I take its downstream to the upstream of guard unit A, and I just keep going through, and on that last unit, I think it'd be G or H, you route that one back up to core unit 1. So it's just a closed fiber loop. And you can do a single fiber link, you can do a dual redundant link, or you can also do 2 dual redundant links. We offer 4 different levels of redundant connectivity on the IFL bus. So, but yeah, it does not need to be in any specific orders, but you just need to close the loop between all the different units involved.
Okay, a few more questions. What port count is required for spare frame in an M+M scenario? So for intelligent
Okay,
redundancy.
yes. If you are going to use the intelligent redundancy, you would want your backup frame to be as big as the largest frame in your Odin stack. So if I had 2 Odins at 64 ports and a third Odin at 128 ports, I would want to make sure that if my backup or redundant Odin was intended to back up any frame, it needs to be as big as the largest frame it's backing up.
Okay. And another question, any thought to having ZEdit automatically backup frame setups on a daily schedule?
That is actually something that has come up. It is a feature that we are tracking, and one of several features that we're tracking and looking at implementation on. The only thing I could see is a potential gotcha there would be after a year of doing backups, depending on how big your hard drive is, you may want to make sure you do some maintenance and things, or we put in a setting to delete a setup file after X number of days, weeks, months. Yeah, but it is a feature that has been under consideration.
Okay, good. And last question, the ultimate question, when will this be available?
This will be available in September. Um, my gut tells me probably towards the 3rd or 4th week of September that will be available. And once this is available, we'll have it posted to our website that you can just download, update your Odins. But again, if you're doing the intelligent redundancy, still update your Odins with the latest firmware for Odin, but you'll still need to contact your local salesperson to obtain an intelligent redundant license. Again, the one-to-one redundancy, we offer that to people free of charge. The intelligent does require a license, which is a chargeable item, but you can prep your Odins ahead of time with the latest software. Again, we'll have that on the website towards the end of September, and that's a free download that anybody can go to the website and grab.
Okay. And you do have, I believe, some projects that are coming up in the near future that are going to be incorporating Odin
Yes,
redundancy.
yes, actually, we have 2 new systems that will be installing a little bit earlier than the official release. These are long-term customers of ours, so they're very comfortable with the maturity level of the software. So we'll be using those as kind of test beds for a week or so, just to make sure that everything is fine, operational, and then releasing that later in the week to the general public.
Yes, and you've been spending a lot of time testing it yourself in the
Yes,
past few
yes.
months.
Actually, my garage is quite warm with the stack of Odins that's running in it. Still working from home.
And one more quick question that you touched upon. Someone's asking, can I back up an Odin 16 with an Odin 32? Which would be
Oh yeah,
yes.
yeah. Bigger is better. Yeah, if an Odin is bigger than the unit it's backed up, no issue whatsoever. It's just if the Odin backup is smaller than the unit is, then you're gonna lose ports. And yeah, we've actually prohibited that from being done because we have no visibility in what are your critical ports and what are the ones that you don't think are so critical. But yeah, a bigger Odin can back up a smaller Odin, no problem.
Okay. So we'll start to wrap things up here. If you could advance to the next
Yep.
slides for me, Sean. So we have one more session for Bosch Communications Summer Showcase at 3 p.m. today. We'll be talking about Electro-Voice Evolve. Go to the next. Please check out all of our brands websites for Bosch, Dynacord, Electro-Voice, RTS, and Telex, as well as our social media. And I just want to thank you for your time today. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact your local RTS sales managers for pricing and availability. You can go to our contacts page at rtsintercoms.com. We have a very detailed listing to direct contact information for sales and support. And so thanks again for attending today. And if you have any other questions that you didn't get to the chat, feel free to contact us. Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Thank you, everybody, for attending.